Hi guys, it's Nazia from Agent of Academia. I wanted to have this presentation today for you guys. Some of you from the Neurocriminology Facebook page that I run have expressed some interest in getting a little bit of more information about how to get into neurocriminology. What is it, what you need to do to basically go along that career path. So here we go. So what is it? I mean, I'm sure many of you know what it is, but I think this is a pretty simple definition, and it's really a crossroad of psychology and neuroscience and neuroanatomy and biology. It's basically a way for scientists and researchers to explain the brain to behavior connection. And you'll also occasionally see some programs called like biopsychology. Really plays along the same lines. I think it's a little bit more broader because obviously the brain is just one aspect of our body that controls functions. So um, I put a few examples here of themes, research themes in neurocriminology. So the first one, aggressive behavior correlating to head trauma. And I think I'm going to use Phineas Gage as my example. It's like the number one example I think any professor normally in Psych 101 gives. Phineas was a railroad worker and he had a iron rod basically struck through, I think, his frontal lobe, into his eye, into his frontal lobe. And remarkably, even though he was able to heal and live for quite a few years, many people, or should I say rumors, um, of this story say that Phineas's personality changed. And I think, back then maybe a lot of the scientists or doctors, you know, kind of correlated this with brain and behavior. Well, if part of your brain that's responsible for functioning, in terms of making decisions and stuff is destroyed, then that is likely to cause a change in your behavior. So that's one aspect. Genetic predispositions. A classic example is perhaps somebody who is a criminal, they have a long criminal history, but then when you look at maybe their father, their mother, they too have a history of criminal behavior, and maybe their parents have a history of criminal behavior. So there are researchers that are trying to understand what this connection is, if there is even one, that involves being genetically predisposed to a criminal lifestyle, basically. Brain structures differing in psychopaths versus non-psychopaths. I use this as an example because this is actually research that is going on now. Basically, there are fMRI studies and PET scans that are trying to show and have been successful in showing differences in people who are psychopaths and non-psychopaths. And what this really implies is that, how can we hold people responsible if their actions, if their actions are being controlled by their brain and their brain structures are so different? It's a thin line to walk on because it really involves looking at science for answers, for the legal system. How do we prosecute someone? How do we hold them responsible? How responsible are they? How much of their brain structure, takes part in what they do, So these are just some few themes, and there's a lot more, but I think these are the ones that I've been seeing a lot more in the news. So, is neurocriminology for you? Well, it really depends. I listed a few things here, and I like to say it's really great to have an interest in some of these, brain and behavior, neuroscience, and understanding criminal behavior. These are all really interesting themes and areas that I know I personally enjoy reading, but I want to say that for purposes of having a degree, an advanced degree, you're really going to also have to have interest in research. So it's not just about, hey, let's read about what, researcher X is doing. You're going to really want to be interested in looking at what's going on and how you can expand on it. And I think that's very, very important. What are you going to study in college in order to get to on the path of studying neurocriminology? Well, I've listed a few things here: psychology, criminology. You can take any of these. You could actually even take, a simple liberal arts type of a degree. It really depends on what classes you end up taking and what your program allows you to take. I think out of all of these, psychology is probably the most open-minded, and you'll see why I say that even later on when I talk about master's and PhD programs. But again, because neurocriminology is such an interdisciplinary program, you want to be well-rounded. So think about the mind and behavior, right? So behavioral psychology and then the mind. You have to know how the body works, how the brain works, and how to connect, psychology and neuroscience together. These are examples of classes. You can obviously read. I put two law classes, and obviously these names will differ depending on your school and the program you're in. I think why I put law for you guys to understand is that part of neurocriminology is to understand the law and how your research may affect the law, or how we can make new laws based on new findings in neurocriminology. And I want to also point out, I put an asterisk next to research method and statistics. Just in about every psychology program, you'll find research methods and you'll have to take statistics. Because when you do become a researcher, these are going to be prominent parts of what you're going to need to know. When you do research, you're going to have to understand from beginning to end, how do you come up with a research idea? What is a hypothesis? How do you come up with a hypothesis? It's not just, doing an experiment and then getting your data. There's so many details involved in research. But again, these are classes you'll have to take. And statistics. Statistics is, the quantitative aspect of research methods. What does your data mean? Your raw data. You have to take that and you have to use different methods in measuring what you have to come to some sort of a conclusion, I would say. So statistics is really important when you start doing your own research. From bachelor's to graduate school. So the majors and minors stuff that I talked about earlier, that's what you should be taking in your undergraduate course, okay? When you get to a master's and PhD, ideally, I would say you want to get to a PhD level if you're interested in doing, if you're interested in having a career in neurocriminology, because I can tell you right now, there's not many, if any, jobs right now in terms of, outside of academia, outside of research. Most people who do study neurocriminology are researchers, either at a college or they teach a class here and there, and then they have another job. But I would say for the most part, you would want to get a PhD in order to do high-level research in neurocriminology. You can get a master's, of course you can, but you will be limited in what you can and cannot do. And this, again, all of this depends on school, program, etc. Okay. Again, I think the most uh, the most broad program to take is psychology, because a lot of schools will have psychology as like the main uh, the main course, or should I say the main name of the program, and there's this like sub levels. So you might have psychology, but then there might be two departments. There might be clinical psychology, okay? There might be experimental psychology. There might be biopsychology. So I think that psychology is probably the most frequent program, should I say, you'll see out there when it comes to masters and PhDs. There really is no PhD or master's program that I've ever seen specifically titled neurocriminology. Again, this all falls under usually neuroscience, neuropsychology, biopsychology. You could even do criminology. I listed criminology here because it is very relevant to neurocriminology, obviously. But with that being said, you're gonna have to do some extra work in taking psychology and, again, like I said, the hard science classes, okay? You're gonna want to check the program requirements. What does this what does this program look like? You're gonna want to look at the research of the faculty. Many schools will favor applicants whose research interests are similar to the faculty members' research there. Okay, and this makes sense because you're going to be basically partnered up with a mentor. So it would make sense that your research interests kind of align with their research interests. So it'll be a smoother transition for everybody. Okay? Evaluate the school and program as a whole. I say this because it's one thing to just look at a program and say, okay, yeah, that sounds like an interesting program, but you have to look at everything. You have to look at the campus. You have to look at your mentor. You have to look at the package of the program. You know, how much are you paying? You know, are they going to give you a stipend? Are you getting a scholarship? There's so many things to look at. You know, look at the location. Is this where you want to live? Especially if you're doing a PhD, you're going to be there for at least 4 to 5 years, okay? So you're going to want to be in a place where that you either like or you can see yourself getting adjusted to. How to get a competitive edge. Yes, grades are very important, and as you see, the fifth one down, high GPA is always important regardless of your major and minor in undergrad. But there are a few more things that you really need to have on your CV to make you stand out. So one of the top things I put up there is undergraduate research. Many colleges have programs that help students get involved, give them experience in research before they hit that graduate school level. Volunteer wherever you can, whether it's in a hospital or a psychiatric facility, volunteer. And some of these places also offer internships where you can get credit for, okay? I think one of the hardest things on here is to publish a paper. Now, in order to do that, you have to do research. And I'm not saying it's impossible, but your research has to be solid, okay? Most schools, at least in the US, will also require that you take the GRE general test. Now, what you need to score on that really depends. Take a look at your school's program. A lot of schools will tell you, hey, in order to be competitive, you need to fall between this and this range, or they'll tell you what previous students' GRE scores were. So you kind of have an idea where you might fit and how good of your chances to get in. GRE subject test. This is not mandatory, but there are some schools that do require it. So I know, for example, University of New Mexico, for their psychology program, they do want you to take the GRE subject test in psychology. Again, this will depend on the program that you apply to. So make sure you really read through all the information that they have on their website. And if there's something that's missing, feel free to contact them. Email, phone call, whatever. Just make sure you get all your information before you make the time and effort into applying there. Well, I hope this was really helpful. If you have any questions, please let me know. And as always, you can follow me on Facebook with the Neurocriminology page. And for tips on uh, staying, I guess, on top of the academic curve, follow me on WordPress, YouTube, and Facebook at Agent of Academia. Thanks. Bye.